Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into the SFS channel. We are coming off of a wild slate of Week 14 Sunday action. Now, in this video, I'll be breaking down 10 of my biggest takeaways from Sunday's games as we move forward here into official fantasy football playoff season. These are things that were keys and stood out to me throughout this past week's matchups. So I want to talk through them, give you guys my thoughts, and of course, you can toss your thoughts right back at me in the comments section below. So, as always, again, I hope you guys clinch that playoff spot. Let me know down in the comment section below if you're able to do so. And let's dive right on into my first takeaway or lesson learned here from Week 14. Alrighty, here we go. So unfortunately, I regret to inform you that after expressing some concern and some pessimism on this DeAndre Swift situation, I got a lot of flack in the comment section of my tiers episodes last week for rating DeAndre Swift so lowly. But after this week's games, I think that was very fair and that was warranted. So my takeaway here is that we got to pump the brakes on this whole DeAndre Swift upside conversation. Now, I was excited for what could have been moving forward after last week, but in our Discord server this week, in certain comment sections, obviously in videos with my numeric ranking of them for this upcoming week's games, or, in hindsight here from Week 14, looking back on what I was looking forward to at the time, if that makes sense. I, again, was pessimistic here and cautious of how I thought he would be. I didn't immediately jump to the conclusion that he would be this RB1 top 12 caliber player. And sure enough, you've got 16 rushing attempts to Jamal Williams to just 6 for DeAndre Swift and just 39 yards from scrimmage. So it's clear. He is not a trustworthy fantasy football asset. Let's pump the brakes here. I hate to say it. This is one of my guys heading into this fantasy football season. He has utterly let me down, and it breaks my heart to say so. But I feel that I was right to be cautious in my evaluation of him entering into this week's games. Again, I'm sure you will be entering into Week 15 after that stinker. Saquon Barkley. I believe that Saquon could potentially be in for a fantasy football slide here. He has somewhat been on a slide for some time now. Now, it hasn't been super extreme per se, but I think that this Giants football team is somewhat fraudulent, and this football team is dragging his fantasy stock down with it. Now, we just saw them get absolutely bombed by the Philadelphia Eagles. It was 44-16 or 17 maybe. I don't even remember. It was a complete slaughtering. And obviously negative game scripts, ineffective offensive line play, the fact that Philly's defensive line was getting better. It was all a humongous recipe for fantasy football disaster for Saquon, in addition to the fact that he's dealing with a neck injury. So there's a couple of elements at play here that kind of culminate in me lowering my expectations for Saquon here going forward. I still believe that he should be thought of as a top 12 player, but I don't necessarily think that he is in the RB1 to 3 conversation anymore, which we're going to talk about a name that has basically stormed his way right back into that conversation in just a second here. And that being Christian McCaffrey. I actually forgot that was our next take here. CMC, absolutely with Brock Purdy, looks as if his role projects him to be arguably the fantasy football running back one the rest of the way this season. Now, again, this is a little spot where I was slightly wrong. I believe I had my top 2 running backs were Derrick Henry and Austin Eckler last week. In the rest of season tiers rankings for the fantasy playoffs, right below him at the RB3 spot, I had Christian McCaffrey. A couple of you guys argued that he should be in that top tier. I'm 100% with you now. I saw it. I saw what I needed to see. The usage was there. It was great. The offensive line is playing at a high level. Every box was checked for me. Now, it was a great game script. They blew out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but Christian McCaffrey and this Brock Purdy-led offense was highly, highly impressive. And leading into Brock Purdy here, he has arrived, and again, this is a lesson learned for me. I was wrong on how effective he could be at managing the San Francisco offense. Now, unfortunately, Deebo Samuel looks like a high ankle sprain. He's going to miss some time here. But as a distributor of the football, Brock Purdy functioned and executed at a level higher than my expectations entailed here. And to that, I give him credit. I hope that he's able to consistently do this. It's interesting to project Brandon Ayuk's role going forward, who was a little bit underproductive as I expected this week. But now he should chart into that wide receiver one role. I'd be highly surprised to see Deebo not miss more than a game or two here. Ayuk should have the opportunity to increase his role with this team if Brock Purdy can continue to keep rolling here as the distributor for this offense. Next up, J.K. Dobbins. Looks like he has officially returned back to the fantasy football scene as a productive RB2 level player. Now, my concern with J.K. Dobbins has always been his floor. His ceiling is great. He's an explosive player who can make big time plays. He's also kind of an end zone magnet. When he's consistently been on the field, He has scored touchdowns at a high clip. Now, the healthy part hasn't always been a part of the equation here in the conversation, but storming back into his first game with the Ravens here since re-injuring his knee that he already had to return from once earlier in the season from a 2021 ACL injury. He now comes back, 15 rushing attempts for 120 yards, a touchdown. He looked fantastic. Again, he's not a workhorse running back. He's not super involved in the pass catching game. He had just a 46% snap count percentage, 52% of the rushing opportunity share here. But again, he's explosive. He can make plays happen. And with the quarterback situation, these guys are going to be immensely dependent on the run game to provide for this offense. With Tyler Huntley going down, it's now Anthony Brown potentially the starter for the team here in Week 15. We'll see if Huntley can come back and play, but there's been injuries left and right to the quarterback position as we get down the stretch here. Evan Ingram, man, what a week he had. Now, this isn't a direct Evan Ingram take here. This is more so a take on overall this season. Trying to predict tight end success has been an absolute nightmare and headache. The unpredictability and variance of this position has been so sporadic. It's been something to behold here. Evan Ingram, if we just talk through what he did this week, he got 11 passes for 162 yards and 2 touchdowns, a career day for a once highly touted prospect in the 2017 NFL draft. Has had a lot of his career derailed due to injuries, but man, he came out here, looked like an absolute beast. On the flip side, a guy who we usually think of as a fantasy football stud has been completely derailed by his team's offense and team situation. Mark Andrews has stunk here for the better part of a month plus, catching just 2 passes for 17 yards. Again, quarterback plays affecting him. I thought he would be fine with Tyler Huntley as he had some success with him last year with Lamar out, but man, it's been ugly. It's been undesirable, and hopefully Mark Andrews isn't dragging your fantasy team down with it here. And then one final name just to mention here to go along with this whole tight end take here. 4 catches for 71 yards is all Travis Kelce could put together this week. After having such a large and dominating point spread between Travis Kelce and the tight end 2 this season, it seems as if the last couple of weeks his numbers are regressing. If you watched Mahomes and Kelce the last 2 games, they seem out of sync. Something seems off here, and there's been a frequent amount of drops from Kelce, which has been something I'm not super accustomed to seeing. The Dallas Cowboys defense here, a little take on what to expect for some pivotal playoff opponents here. So the run game, I've been on this for a couple weeks now. This is the way to move the sticks against the Dallas Cowboys, and especially for inferior opponents, you have to run the ball in order to keep the game close. The Houston Texans had absolutely no business being competitive with Dallas in this game. Now, their defense was opportunistic, and on offense, they didn't give the ball back. They played ball control football. Were they efficient? No, but they ran the ball 22 times for 78 yards and a touchdown with Dameon Pierce, who has been a no-show for, again, the better part of a month here. He's been a guy who has been really undependable over the last, portion of time here and been a pretty streaky player as this team has regressed offensively, but they hung around in this game because they ran the football. If these next 3 opponents here of the Dallas Cowboys, despite the offensive juice and defensive juice this team has, if the Jaguars, the Eagles, and the Titans just run the football, they are going to be fine against this team. You can sustain life this way, keep the game close and manageable, and try and take advantage of the fourth quarter here. So for Travis Etienne, Miles Sanders, and Derrick Henry, fear not. There is opportunities here, despite at face value, this team looking tough and stout against opposing fantasy running backs. Running the ball is the key to success, even if it's not efficient, and even at the end of the day, if the overall rushing totals aren't monstrous, you got to do it. Otherwise, if you get behind the chains, take sacks here, this team will eat you alive and create turnovers. D'Onta Foreman. A little bit of a negative take here, unfortunately. D'Onta Foreman's been someone I have been a huge fan of this season. I love his story. I love what he's represented. I love how he has played football physically and passionately for this Panthers team. He says all the right things at the press box. And at the end of the day here, I'm a little disappointed to see, despite having a whopping 46 team rushing attempts, this backfield is turning more and more into a true committee every single week. I talked about this with Chuba Hubbard as a waiver wire acquisition for this week. Go target him if you're in your leagues, if he's available. He is only rostered in 36% of leagues. But between Blackshear and Hubbard being involved in this offense, Hubbard was the more efficient back this week. Both Foreman and Hubbard had 74 yards. It was 7 fewer opportunities and carries for Chuba Hubbard, who had 17 total opportunities but 14 total rushes to 21 for Foreman. Both netted 74 rushes on the ground. So for Pittsburgh, or excuse me, yards. I said that terribly. So against Pittsburgh this next week, we could see even more Chuba Hubbard if they're impressed with what they saw from him. All warning signs and things to keep in consideration here as we move into week 15 and beyond. So basically, the end of the day take here, the bottom line is that D'Onta Foreman trending down for me, whereas guys like Chuba Hubbard slightly turning upwards. At the end of the day, though, it doesn't really look great as a week-to-week play for any of these players in the Panthers backfield. Now, David Njoku, I really wanted to talk about this. I loved David Njoku coming into the 2022 season. Now, Jacoby Brissett was the quarterback for the majority of the season. David Njoku in his own right has dealt with injury problems throughout the year. He looks like he could be, I don't want to go as far as say as a league-winning tight end here, but he could make a crucial and pivotal difference for your fantasy football lineups here. This could be the late-season breakout you're looking for to save yourself at this position. Now, he's rostered in over 80% of formats on Yahoo, so he's not widely available as a waiver wire acquisition, but this guy can be a lot of points or be, represent a lot of points off your bench here if you've had him stashed here for the last chunk of time. Njoku, in his first game with Deshaun Watson, a 94% snap rate, a 98% route rate, which means he's running routes on 98% of the team's offensive passing plays, a 22% target share, and caught 7 balls for 59 yards and a touchdown. Again, game number 1 with Deshaun Watson. So Deshaun's always loved his tight ends dating back to his Houston days with far less talent, guys like Jordan Akins and others. So lots of opportunity on the table for David Njoku to take advantage of and create opportunities with going forward. I really like him as a top 12 play the rest of the season, especially with how weak this position group has been here. Now, last up here, Mike Evans. Now, this is a guy that for a couple of weeks now, I've been talking about as a potential no longer wide receiver 1. That is clear and obvious. That is incredibly evident at this current point in time. For the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about him as a wide receiver 2 candidate, meaning somewhere in the 20 to 24 range here. I am now ready to go to the point where Mike Evans may be in the wide receiver 3 conversation. He may no longer warrant, and I actually benched him in all of my leagues this week. Sounds crazy, benching Mike Evans, but I did it. I'm moving him out of lineups. He is no longer a must-start player for me, despite the elite levels of opportunities. I actually went back and charted some numbers here. 39 targets in his last 5 games, averaging over 7 targets per game. He's not scored over 7.5 fantasy points in half PPR in a single one of those contests. So the production is not there. The touchdowns are not there. He is not capitalizing on opportunities, and therefore the miserable passing quality from Tom Brady has not turned into fantasy success at any turn. So for Mike Evans, he is trending way down continually here. And for the fantasy playoffs, if you've got someone hot right now, a Christian Watson, maybe a Garrett Wilson, if Mike White continues to start, don't think twice about potentially starting one of those names in favorable matchups over a guy like a Mike Evans, who was a high draft pick by you. It's a proven fantasy commodity, but has been really underproducing this season. So there you guys have it. 10 takeaways from Week 14 fantasy football. If you enjoyed, make sure to head on down, smash that subscribe button, turn the bell on as well, smash the like button to help out the channel in this video here, reach other fantasy players, help others out in the community. We've got our waiver wire episode out today as well. Make sure to check that out. Our Week 15 playlist starts now. That's live on the channel, and you can check out everything as we posted there throughout this week. So thanks so much, you guys. I'll see you there. Peace out.